The Last Journey, Chapter 3.
Before we reached our destination, I received a call from negotiator Sheila. Her eggs had hatched. She and minor Kelly had 143 hatchlings, and she had named 3 after me, Stella and T. Vass. We returned to the Krill home world and were introduced to our namesakes. I was honored that pilot David seemed to be the image of negotiator Carter, with a few subtle differences in the coloring of his body armor. He looked healthy, strong, and intelligent, and I was a proud godfather. The 2 daughters, negotiator Stella and healer T. Vass, were Sheila's spitting image. T. Vass stood in for Stella as we were made godparents of these 3 miniature krill. T. Vass and I caressed Sheila and Kelly's appendages, frankly hugged, and we told them to call us to celebrate events in the children's lives and to send us photographs from time to time. We bid farewell and flew to Flysinga to keep our rendezvous with the good admiral. We had been asked to formalize the pact we had forged when we had faced the Archons in battle, and we were ordered to try to negotiate a mutual trade agreement and a mutual defense treaty with the Flysing. It seemed natural for us to sit down and negotiate with the great, wingless dragon we knew and loved as Admiral Yellowtooth. We arrived to a tumultuous welcome by the Flysing Navy and Marine Corps. Our friend Admiral Yellowtooth had arranged things to lure us to Flysinga to celebrate a unique Armed Forces Week festival where Flysing people honored their military personnel and their sacrifice. I was to be the Grand Marshal. Something began to worry me. I was lured to the Krill home world and honored. The whole ship and crew were honored. I was honored by her naming negotiator Sheila's children after me, Stella and T. Vass. I was honored by being made the Grand Marshal of the Flysing Armed Forces Week Parade. We had not been given an exploratory mission or a guard duty mission. What was happening? We did sit down with the Admiral and hammered out the Mutual Defense Treaty, and later we negotiated with the Ministry of Trade to develop a trade agreement. We were wined and dined by the Flysing citizens, and then, we were introduced to 4 Flysing females who presented us with a sizable ornate symbol to be affixed to the hull of the Constitution. This symbol was a symbol of gratitude from the sex slaves we had rescued during our hunting trip with the Admiral. These 4 females were Flysinga citizens who had been treated for the trauma they had experienced, had married, and had started families. We were introduced to their firstborn and were honored for the rescue. One of the females addressed the crew and guests.
We are very grateful to Captain Stevens and his crew for the kindness shown to us at the time of our rescue. To honor you, Captain and crew of the USS Constitution, we have prevailed upon our rulers to make you honorary citizens of Flysinga.
The Admiral smiled and handed me a packet.
David, my friend, these are the citizenship identification cards for each of your crew. Please see that each member is given their ID card.
Then he addressed the crew.
This simple card will ensure you are treated as a citizen of Flysinga anywhere in the galaxy where we have influence. Thank you all.
Many crewmen stoically accepted the honors, some with big smiles, while some openly wept. I stood, my arm around T. Vass. Mr. President, honored guests, Admiral, sailors, and Marines. We are humbled by your gestures and honored to be counted as your brothers and sisters. You have a God named Love and Mercy. May love and mercy bless and prosper Flysinga and the Flysing people. I have tried to be able to express our gratitude in your language, but I failed. Our vocal apparatus is much too different, and so I must say to you, in my language, thank you from the bottom of our hearts. We spent a fortnight in orbit around Flysinga and enjoyed the time with the Flysing people and our Flysing naval friends. At the end of our stay, I received another assignment to visit Angel Cloud 3, this time to give the improved manufacturing process and the new dosing instructions to the originators of the AC-3 cure. I got on the hyperspace comm and asked to speak to Admiral John Self. Beverly answered. I asked to speak to John, but Beverly said he was unavailable.
David, may I help you?
I answered, Bev, I want to know just what is going on. Why am I being sent to planet after planet and system after system on what should be diplomatic missions? Beverly replied.
John feels that these missions are vital to the Federation and that we need to send the best captain as our liaison to these planets and systems.
I paused and replied, Bev, I don't buy it. I thought we had a better relationship than this. I'm sorry to have bothered you. Steven's out. Goodbye. Call.
Captain, a burst message for you. Source unknown.
On screen, it said, Captain's eyes, only. It was encrypted. I sat in my ready room waiting for the computer to decrypt, and then it appeared on the screen.
David, John told me to send this message, hoping to avoid interception by the wrong people. The President has been influenced to demand your retirement or resignation. John is trying to keep you busy and away from Sector 00 until after the general election. Then, hopefully, the new administration will not demand the end of your service. Beverly. Remember to have your crew cast their ballots soon.
I sent an encrypted hyperspace message in reply. I believe I deserve to be informed. What does the president have against me? David. Admiral John Self's voice came from our computer.
Dave, the president was in cahoots with Maximilian Sargon. But as president, he has, so far, escaped justice. He is out for your hide, so I've kept you out of sight and busy with diplomatic issues to save your career. Dave, I need you to be the captain I know you are for just until after the election. Then the Capitol Police will arrest a demon and put him away for a long time.
After the trip to Angel Cloud 3, we were sent to the Empire of Soren again to forge a mutual defense treaty and a trade agreement. We had never been given the location of the Soren Empire, and I thought hard to dredge that information out of my head from my encounter with Admiral Kalfram. She had pictured the location in her mind while we were communicating before they were restored to their bodies. I gave Hank what I could remember, and we set course for that sector of space. As we approached the sector of space, I thought I remembered from my brief encounter with Admiral Kalfram. We were challenged.
Unknown vessel, you're encroaching on the Soren Empire's space. Identify yourself.
We replied, this is Captain David Stevens, USS Constitution of the United System Federation. We come in peace. I am seeking Admiral Jose Kalfram. Again, we were challenged.
What would a mere captain have to do with our esteemed admiral?
I replied, I am Vice Admiral David Stevens, I am captain of this ship, I would speak to your esteemed admiral, if possible. There was a long pause, then.
How would we address you?
I replied, I don't really care, captain would be fine. Tal called out.
Captain, on screen.
Admiral Kalfram appeared.
Captain Stevens, how are you and your crew?
I replied, 5 by 5, Admiral. And you? She asked.
You said, Vice Admiral, and you still captain your ship?
Yes. The Chief of Naval Operations is my former first officer and my friend. I am close to retirement age. It's a mercy he has afforded to me. We have come as representatives of our Federation to negotiate a mutual trade agreement and a mutual defense treaty with your empire. She replied.
David, would you teleport to my ship to talk in more congenial surroundings?
I agreed. My first officer and I will be right over. Hank, you have the con. T-Sun, you're with me. Number 1, personal shields, no weapons. We teleported to the Admiral's flagship and were greeted by the Admiral and the captain of her ship.
Welcome aboard, Admiral, Commander. Please come with me and my captain.
I shook the Admiral's hand, and then the captain said, Captain Jeffries, it is good to see you again. I trust you're well after your encounter with the Death Pulse. Please, this is my first officer, Commander T-Sun Peterson. The Admiral said.
We are indebted to you, David. But you need to understand that we are in a sticky situation. Our Emperor is insane, paranoid, and dangerous, a danger to himself and everyone else. We have remained aboard the Emperor Skellen since you helped us with the Life Pulse. The Emperor has a personal guard force of 10,000 that are rabid in their duty to the Emperor. Such negotiations would surely mean your death and the destruction of your ship. I could not tell you over the comm since listening ears are everywhere.
I nodded, I understand. Perhaps when there is a change of power then. She replied.
Perhaps. Stay safe. I'll escort your ship out of the Empire space.
I agreed. T-Sun and I teleported back to the Constitution, and we were escorted out of the sector. Our parting was congenial.
Go with God, Captain Stevens.
I replied. Calm seas and fair winds, Admiral. Captain Jeffries. I directed. Hank, let's go see Slomerian. You have the coordinates, right? He replied.
Aye, sir.
Barbara, UL-16, please. Tal, send the contact information for the Soren Empire report to Admiral Self. He replied.
Aye, sir.
But before we could even begin to move, Tal called.
Captain, on screen.
There on the screen was the image of a person, seemingly made out of rock. He looked a lot like Ben Grimm of the Fantastic Four movie.
USS Constitution. I am solid graph of the Slomerian Republic. Captain Gregory Jones told us of your interest in our civilization. I am here to guide you to our system.
I asked, are you capable of UL speed? He replied.
Ultra light? Yes, we can obtain ultralight 10.
I replied, in that case, Captain, lead on. Barbara, UL-10, follow that car. I laughed out loud. As we followed Solid Graph, Barbara said,
Sir, he is going a little faster than UL-10, and he's pulling away.
I replied, keep up with him. No big deal, is it? She smiled at me.
No, sir, no big deal.
And she laughed. Then came shift change, the oncoming crew were briefed. Then I asked the bridge crew to step into the ready room. The crew of this ship is the best crew in the Navy, and I mean you. Pointing to each member, T-Sun, Hank, Barb, Tall, Carrie, Gordy, Phil, Meg, Boomer, and Sylvia. I pray for every crewman as often as I can, but praying for 420 individuals takes time. I want you to know how much I appreciate your loyalty and, shall I say, love. Your love and caring for me, Davy, Jenny, and my dearest Stella during her time before and after her passing will never be forgotten, and is in my heart during every prayer I utter for each of you. Thank you all. Dismissed. T-Sun asked.
Captain, what was all that about?
I replied, number 1, I realized I take our crewmen for granted. I need to tell them how much they mean to the ship and me. She paused, then.
Captain, Admiral, you said, love. You have named the way I feel about the ship, her crew, and you, like negotiator Sheila expressed. Friendship, love.
T-Sun, you have always been there for your ship, our crew, and me. Thank you. Know that I pray for you and Hank every morning. I stepped onto the bridge. May I have your attention for a moment? Gloria, ship wide, please. This is the captain, all crewmen. I appreciate each and every one of you. I appreciate your work, your loyalty, and your, should I say, your love for our ship and love for one another. Know that I pray for each one of you as often as I can. For the 18 years I have commanded this ship, we have lost 4 fellow crewmen. I mourn for them and vow that no other will suffer the same fate if I have anything to do about it. Again, thank you, each and every one of you. As I walked to the personnel lift the following day, my crew greeted me with smiles and warm tones.
Good morning, Captain. Have a nice day.
My spirits were lifted, and I returned their greetings. Following the Slomerian ship, we were able to relax and unwind due to the slower pace of our flight. However, we soon established orbit around a blue planet. Over the comm, I heard,
Constitution, welcome to Slomeria. You are invited to teleport down to our planet and get to know us.
Number 1, make up a landing party to escort you and me to the surface. She assigned security and first contact personnel, and we teleported to the surface to be greeted by a small group of planetary officials. One of those who met us at the landing site stepped forward.
Captain Stevens, I am Solid Graph, your escort captain. Our welcoming party includes Chairman Amaka Stone, our Vice Chairman, Slow Plane, and our Commissioner of Trade, Swing Handle.
I introduced our party. This is Commander T-Sun Peterson, my first officer, Vice Admiral T. Vass Stevens, our ship surgeon, and this is Master Chief Petty Officer Robert Briggs, my security chief. Marker Stone extended his hand, and we shook hands all around. Marker Stone said,
We are very pleased to meet you, Captain. We were overjoyed when Captain Jeffers told us you were interested in meeting us. We understand that you might be interested in negotiating a mutual trade agreement, and we would be very amenable to such a deal.
We sat and negotiated with the Commissioner of Trade and obtained a list of items they might want to trade for and a list of items they might be willing to trade with. We were allowed to take shore leave if we observe specific stipulations, small groups of 4 or 5 individuals, 2 of which must be males, have no weapons, stay within certain borders, and be respectful of the Slomerian people. I was approached about a mutual defense treaty and said, that is not something I could possibly negotiate at this time. We don't really know your people, and although we would respond to any signs of unwarranted aggression against your people, my government would have to do the negotiating. At least until we are better acquainted with you and your people. Captain Solid Graph and I were talking about the mutual defense treaty, and I asked why they should need such a treaty, and he replied,
Captain Stevens, our bodies are based in silicon. They are very hard and very durable. Gem hunters have plagued us, our flesh polishes up to, I guess, a bright, sparkling hue. We have been hunted down like rats and skinned for our flesh. We would appreciate help in protecting our people.
I asked about how the hunters operate. The captain told me they were small raiding parties, one small ship using stealth technology. They kidnap a male, a female, a small male, and a petite female, and they are gone before we know they are there. I asked how often these hunters attacked, and he replied,
About every 20 days.
I thought we could hang around for a fortnight to see if we could capture these murderers. I called down to George in engineering. George, remember the spy gadgets that O'Reilly put together when we found Commodore Bluetail and his crew? I want the same thing to monitor Slomerian for any unknown ships entering the region. George said he could do it and would provide such a satellite in 2 days. A week later, George called.
Captain, I've got your spy gadgets ready.
I laughed. 2 days, George? He replied,
I engineered a stealth mode so as not to be detected.
Let's deploy your masterpiece. And so, we set the gadget in orbit to await the murderers. We took shore leave, rested, watched, and waited. It was 19 days since we had arrived in the sector. We waited in the shadow of their moon, monitoring the gadget George had created. Tal reported,
Captain, the gadget is sending an alarm.
I called down to the sensor lab. Kate, do you detect anything? She replied,
Yes, sir, a small ship with an unknown registry. No transponder. No markings. Possibly a 10-man ship.
Let's take them in tow and interrogate them. Using our tractor beam, we captured the ship and called to them, This is the USS Constitution of the United System Federation Navy. What is your business in this sector? I saw a creature looking like a hairless ape on screen.
What right have you to accost this ship?
I replied, That all depends on your intentions. I shall turn you over to the Slomerian authorities to deal with you. The screen's visage changed color to a greenish hue.
No, don't turn me over to them, they will kill me.
I smiled. Now, why do you suppose they would do that? He was terrified.
We've been stealing their people for their skin.
Oh, well, then, I turned to Tal. Call Captain Solidgraph and tell him I have his kidnappers. Come and get them. Oh, and tell him I have their confession on record, just in case they need it for the trial. I called the escort team. Lieutenant, I want you to surround that little ship out there with, say, 6 JPG-class dreadnoughts. She replied,
Aye, sir.
Lieutenants Waters, Wong, and Nakamura smiled and began to play with the hunter's ship. Conversations about tearing the ship open to get at the murders, gun ports opening, and aiming at the raider's ship. Then a stern warning in the captain's voice.
Move and Captain Solidgraph gets little pieces to serve at dinner.
Captain Solidgraph arrived near my ship and he called me.
Captain Stevens, I have brought our Minister of Justice with me, and we would like to take custody of your prisoners.
Captain Solidgraph, they're all yours. We'll take their ship to the surface, and they're yours to do with as seems prudent. Oh, by the way, I have a recording of their confession if you need it for their trial. The good captain replied.
Trial? Oh, yes, of course. Would you transmit it to my ship? Please.
I said, Captain, I suggest that you ask them about other hunters. That might be some excellent information to have. Later. About 12 hours later, I received a message inviting me and my senior officers to view the trial of the abductors' murders. T. Vass, T. Sun, Hank, Barbara, Tal, George, Bob Briggs, and I teleported to view the trial. What we saw was justice. The murderers were dealt with dignity and respect. It reminded me of an old Earth-style trial in merry old England. Wigs, robes, yes my lord, no my lord. If it pleased the court. In the end, the murderers were sentenced to be executed. Immediately after the trial, they were taken into the courtyard and executed by firing squad. The crowd was respectful and quietly whispering. At the end of it all, the bodies of the murderers were taken away to be cremated. Captain Solidgraph told me that the murderers had refused to tell them about any other murderers. I gave him the spy gadget, promising to return one day. Then, we prepared to return to Sector 00.